As you get going in your narrative, you're going to want to make sure that you have that emotional center to the piece itself. And so then as you go through, you're able to make sure that you're using connotated language that supports that emotion. It doesn't have to, it should have an overall kind of center, but there may be different emotions expressed throughout. And if you're at a point in the piece where your character is feeling sadness, you will make sure that you use words that evoke sadness. If you are at a part where you are wanting your character to use humor, you will evoke humor. But in only a 2-page narrative, you're not going to have a whole bunch of emotions. So if you go through your piece and look at the chunks of it and mark off the different areas where you have, here I'm showing sadness, here I'm showing anxiety, here I'm showing happiness, here I'm showing, if you have more than 3 emotions, you may want to take a look at whether or not you spent enough time on the core emotion that you were hoping to show. Remember that magic of 3. So just always think of that at this point and go from there. So for example, if you are showing sadness with 1D, you want to make sure that the words that you are using show this sadness. Sometimes authors will use these soft sounds like the S's and the F's and M's and N's, those sounds that don't make hard sounds, like duh and buh are harder sounds. But you can use certain words in order to show the sadness. You can do the difference. You have the weeping versus the sobbing versus the bawling. So a lot of you talk about like the single tear coming down your cheek, things of that nature. If it's sadness, think of what the weather might be like, or what the room, the ambiance of the room might be like. I've had some who talk about only hearing the beeping from the heart monitor, the single sound of life in the room. So you have things like that that allow you to show the sadness, the I can't think of the word, of the experience. Okay, anxiety. Oftentimes we associate anxiety specifically with nervousness, but really what anxiety has to do with is this idea of lack of control. So your character can feel anxious in a very sad situation, like if someone is dying that they don't have control over that, it can make them feel anxious. So it could include like your heart beating fast, quickly. It could be that your hands are sweaty. At this point in a piece for the anxiety, those super short sentences and paragraphs would work really well. But anxiety is this lack of control. I can be angry and feel anxiety. I can be nervous and feel anxiety. I can feel sad and feel anxiety. So often it's more associated with lack of control, although we have definitely lumped it into this idea of nervousness. Okay. Again, if your main goal is to communicate fear, you will think of, and again, this is going to definitely stem into anxiety because it's that lack of control. You really can get a whole bunch of stuff in here. Often anger goes here. So you want to make sure that you are showing this emotion throughout your piece, or at least in the chunks within your piece, to keep your reader not guessing what you're trying to communicate. If you want me to take a look at a part, I will do that. Otherwise, go into your narrative now. And I want for you to figure out what are your central emotions that you are showing. I would do this after you do the paragraphing and dialogue lessons. That way you can make sure that you are kind of paragraphed out, your dialogue isn't confusing. And then I saw one person who, throughout their narrative, they took chunks and they drew like a box here and they wrote sadness down the side. And then they drew a box here and they're like, this is anxiety. And so they kind of chunked out their narrative to see what it was that they were trying to get their character to feel throughout, make sure that they were being consistent. Okay, if you have any questions, come and ask me. See you soon.